Hello everyone, back to you in today's video. Going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days in today's video. This takes around the 14th of July. It's going into the middle part of the month. We'll also have a look at the CFS V2, and that's going to take us just about into the start of August. So we'll see what the models are predicting. Going to start off with the GFS ensemble. So this is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble chart for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average, and we can see that temperatures are going to be lifting up over the next few days. It's going to turn quite hot for a time at the end of this week. That could trigger some thunderstorms, so we'll probably be updating Stormwatch about that tomorrow. Going to wait for it to come a little bit further into the reliable time frame and the high resolution model. So I think we'll do Stormwatch tomorrow about the storm potential at the end of the week, from Thursday into Friday. At the end of the week and into weekend, we find the upper air temperatures are cooling down, and that takes into weekend where things will be quite a bit cooler. Now, next week, there was a suggestion yesterday within the GFS ensembles that we might get another push-up in temperature for the middle and latter stages of next week, more hot air returning from the south. Today, the GFS has really reduced that possibility. We do still have one or two hot outliers for next week, for the second half of next week. But overall, the trend is to keep things average, or maybe even a little bit cooler than average now, as we're going through next week and running up to the middle part of the month. That's this period just here. So that second push-up in the temperature looks like it's been removed from the GFS ensembles and the GFS on output at the moment. As I said, we do have a couple of hot outliers there, so we can't guarantee that we won't see this idea re-emerging within the model output over the next few days. But for the time being, the second push-up in temperatures, which did look really quite hot indeed next week, that looks like it's been taken off the table. We'll wait and see on that, of course. So for precipitation, a lot of dry weather over the next few days. That rainfall spike just there, or those rainfall spikes just there, that's associated with risk of thunderstorms as the temperatures reach their peak at the end of the week. After that, it turns drier over the weekend. Into next week, not much in the way of rain, a little bit of showery rain going through. It does look a little bit wetter there right at the very end of the ensemble. It's into the second half of the month, and a very long way off, so I wouldn't necessarily take that too seriously. Temperature anomalies for the next week are looking like this. Warmer than average for England and Wales, a little bit cooler than average for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, yesterday I was expecting these would be trending warmer, on the basis that, of course, next week we get another push-up in temperatures. As that's not really occurring, then we are expecting temperatures to be hovering around average, a little bit hotter than average in the south, a little bit cooler than average, perhaps, in the north. Bear in mind, it will turn quite hot for a time around Wednesday, Thursday, and for the south, probably lasting into Friday as well. But by the weekend, it is cooling down, and next week does look cooler. Precipitation anomalies look like that. Wetter than average through the central swathe of the country, otherwise probably a little bit on the drier than average side. Here's how the GFS looks for Thursday then. Low pressure is coming up from the south within that hot and humid air, so there is a risk of thunderstorms trundling up from the south into Friday. And it looks like we're keeping things quite unstable there. There's a thundery area of low pressure just to our east, just there. That's taking away the hottest of the air, but it is producing a risk, no more than that at this stage, of thunderstorms. By the weekend, we're into a cooler, fresher northwesterly flow, albeit still with a lot of influence from the Azores high. So I think there will be a lot of dry weather around across the country over the weekend, and still pleasantly warm, just a little bit cooler and fresher, really. Perhaps a bit more unsettled, though, for Scotland, close to this area of low pressure. Now we go through into next week, and again we start off quite an influence from the Azores high, so it should be a fair amount of dry weather. But through the course of the week next week, that high pressure gradually starts to pull away to our west. We begin to get more of a northwesterly influence, which is bringing down both cooler air and more showery conditions as well. We go up towards day 10, and it takes us to day 10. Still with the idea that the Azores high is throwing this ridge across France and into the southern part of the country. So always the most settled, the driest, the warmest weather down in the south In the north, it's always more unsettled. We've got quite tight packed icebergs, so it's fairly windy for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and there will be bands of rain coming through as well. Some of that rain could get through into the south, but overall southern areas should always be warmer and drier in this kind of pattern. ECWF looks thundery for Friday, go through into Saturday, and we take away that thundery low and the hot air. It begins to turn cooler and fresher as well, and that takes us into a cooler, fresher weekend. Through to next week, and again we bring down this northwesterly flow, so that is bringing cooler air down from the north. There might be a showery trough moving southwards as well early next week. The GFS doesn't really show that. I mean, as we go through next week, it's the same idea really between the ECWF and the GFS, in that northern areas are always more unsettled, closest area of low pressure. Southern and southwestern areas close to the Azores High should get the driest of the weather. The difference perhaps is that the ECWF this morning is a little bit more unsettled because the ridge doesn't get thrown into the southern part of the country and into northern France quite as much as we see on the GFS. So actually the ridge is centering here, and, or I should say, the area of high pressure is also high, centering there, and the ridge is in this sort of area, which leaves southern areas as well open to those northwesterly winds and the chance of some showers. That might be a little bit pessimistic. I think the GFS will be closer to how things play out, which is for southern areas to get a fair amount of dry and warm weather, always more unsettled and cooler up in the north. Remember that heat wave that we was looking at on yesterday's update for next week, that looks like it has been removed from the model output, but it could come back. It's still quite a long way off, so obviously we'll be keeping an eye out. Finally, the CFS V2 for the next month, so these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period taking us from the 4th through to the 10th of July. So the coming week finds that we've got this ridge down to the southwest, we've got low pressure up to the north, and we're doing something like that with the jet stream. So after this hotter interlude we've got coming up at the end of the week, it does turn cooler into the weekend with more of a northwesterly type influence. Through to week 2, which is the 11th to the 17th of July, the ridge is to the south of us. It's going into France and out into the Atlantic. We've got low pressure up to the north, doing something like that with the jet stream. So that's a pretty good indication of what the GFS was just showing, actually, with a lot of dry weather and the warmest conditions in the south, the most unsettled and coolest conditions up in the north. And then week 3 brings that ridge back in across the country. So this is from the 18th to the 24th of July, when we see the ridge extending northwards into the UK as the low pressure lifts out towards Greenland and Iceland. That sends the jet stream northwards as well. So that's turning warmer and drier as we go through into the 3rd week of July. And then week 4, which takes us just short of August, we go from the 25th through to the 31st of July, and we find that the high pressure then is centering right over the top of the UK. The jet stream is going a long way north, and that will bring a real spell of summer across many parts of the country for the final week of July. That would be dry, hot, and sunny end to the month. So still that idea within the longer range output that the first part of the month is a little bit cooler and more unsettled, but it's not a washout. For the south, it's a lot of dry weather, but it's more unsettled in the north. Then the second half of the month sees that high pressure building, taking over the pattern, and we end up July on quite a dry and hot note. We'll wait and see how things pan out for July. Obviously, we'll be keeping you posted as we go through the month. But that's how CFS is seeing things at the moment. So all eyes in the shorter term is going to be on the heat and the thunderstorms coming up at the end of the week. Tomorrow we've got the 5-day forecast. As I say, we will be updating Stormwatch as well tomorrow. So come back for all of that tomorrow. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.